Hi everyone. So here is my presentation on Chapter 10, Sustainability and the Natural Environment. So for my discussion case, I decided to take a rather positive route and look at how one particular well-known company, Starbucks, is tackling this idea of environmental sustainability. Now, Starbucks is one of many large corporations with 31,000 stores, 400,000 partners, and servicing about 100 million customers on average a week, according to Starbucks News. Now, that means that the company has a very large impact on its community and society as a whole. So, in order to give back on a positive note, Chief Executive Officer Kevin Johnson announced earlier this year 5 significant ways for the Starbucks chain to continue their resource positivity. The first way is that Starbucks wants to halve their carbon footprint in the next decade by 50%. They want to shift to more plant based food and beverages, as well as reusables and recycled production. They have a new way to track progress within comprehensive environmental footprint that monitors carbon emissions, water use, and waste. They have partnered with several organizations and invested in ways to help sustainability, such as the development of the Starbucks Food Share Program, the Next Gen Cup Challenge, leader of the leadership in energy and environmental design, investments in renewable energy, etc. So, and other things. They have also created a program for other leading initiatives to take courses on sustainability and environmental stewardship. So the new motto is now giving more than we take from the planet. But were these ideas easy for Starbucks to obtain? Will these ideas affect a business's main focus for profit? Should profit be a business's main focus at this point? Or is our environment in such a detrimental health that a company's focus shall shift? Well, this is what I will be discussing throughout this presentation. So why don't we dive on in? For the introduction, there is a discussion of one company that has led in the sustainability movement for years. Patagonia is one fine example of how companies can give back to the environment along with consumer satisfaction and profit gain. So now Patagonia connects customers to nature by providing what they call silent sports. Their use of recycled synthetics and pesticide free organic cotton is used for their clothing products. They donate about 1% of their profits to environmental causes, and they have a wide ranging CSR project that aims for full transparency in the supply chain operations. Now, with these provisions put into place, and or practice, Patagonia is making a difference in the environment, assisting in the maintenance of nature and the decrease in environmental harm. Now, most consumers will praise companies such as this one, but is it ideal that certain companies be praised, or should all companies take the initiative in order to make such actions a norm? So, now how does the environment correlate with the idea of corporate social responsibility? Well, we're going to use the economic model of CSR for purposes of this section. If a company is developed by the economic model, its goal is only to maximize profit in a legal manner. Now, how can market failures affect the environment? There are a few challenges to this ongoing idea, one of which is a failed guarantee that important public goods are preserved and protected because there is no established market pricing. So basically, free to harm. There is also an existence of externalities. Partial or parties external to the economic exchange typically cost companies for the harm being done to the environment and will ultimately affect all of society. Now, then there is the idea of group versus individual decisions and consequences. What is good and rational for a collection of individuals may not be good and rational for society. So then, how can companies create a plan that benefits them, the consumer, and the environment? Well, all in all, companies play a major role in environmental responsibility, more than what may meet the eye. Now, during the 1970s, the idea of governmental regulations controlling environmental problems arose. There was the Clean Air Act of 1970, which was put into place to prevent air pollution, the Federal Water Pollution Act of 1972, which was put into place to regulate discharges of pollutants into the waters and regulate quality standards for surface waters. And then there's the Endangered Species Act of 1973, which was put into place to protect endangered species from extinction. Now, in a way, though, these minimum standards weren't enough to combat this huge issue. There was more needed to help maintain the environment. Businesses have the ability to establish such laws and influence consumer choice. How is this so? Because businesses can also shape public opinion by the approaches they take. One way is through advertising. If major companies advertise healthier, safer, and cleaner environmental options to consumers, it can move consumers to agree in combating such issues. If the government is the only one controlling environmental protection, then such protections and provisions will not extend past the law, but with companies at hand. They are able to pursue profits and combat such harm to the environment in an even more efficient way, for they also can develop and change the perspective of the consumer as well as the government. Okay, so now we move on to economist Herman Daly, who develops a new understanding of economic development. He argued that if society does not change the way business is done, then we would fail to meet basic ethical and environmental obligations. We must shift in our understanding of economic activity, and to do this, we must understand the standard for which such activity is taught, otherwise known as the circular flow model. Here is a quick video explaining such model.
Hey, this is Jacob Clifford. Welcome to ACDC Econ. Today I'm going to show you something that's all around you that most people don't even see. It's called the Matrix, and you're inside it right now. The circular flow matrix or model shows how products, resources, and money flow in the economy. Now look at your surroundings. Seriously, take a moment and look around you. The matrix is everywhere.
It is all around us, even now in this very room.
In a market economy, there's households, which is just people like you and me, and there's also businesses. Now, businesses sell goods and services to the households in something called the product market. It's not like just one place, it's anywhere things are sold, like online or the mall or the street corner, anywhere you can buy stuff. The computer or phone in front of you right now is a great example. I mean, you didn't produce that, a business did, and they sold it to you in the product market. The same thing applies to your chair or pencil or the book over there, everything around you. But to make those goods and services, businesses need resources like workers and machines. In the free market, households own the resources and they're sold to the businesses in the resource market. Economists point out that there's four categories of resources or four factors of production. The first one is land, which is any natural resource or anything that comes from Mother Nature. Then there's labor, then capital, which is tools and machines, and finally, someone to bring it all together, the entrepreneur. That's why it's called the circular flow matrix. Those resources are being used by the business to produce the products that people turn around and go buy. Now, what about money? Well, it goes the other direction. When you buy your phone in the product market, you had to pay them money. That's called consumer spending. Now, that money makes its way to the businesses, and they call it revenue. But the business doesn't get to keep all that money. They've got to pay for resources, and that's called the cost of production. It's being paid to engineers that develop the phone. Those engineers earned income. Economists break down income into four different types that go along with each of the four factors of production. They're called factor payments. When you sell land, you earn rent. When you sell labor, you earn wages. For capital, you get interest. And for entrepreneurship, you get profit. So this is it, the circular flow matrix that shows how a market economy works. Now, let me ask you a few questions to see if you really understand the matrix. First question, is your local mall an example of the product market or the resource market? It's both. Some people are there to buy products in the product market, but there's some people who are working or trying to get a job, and that's a resource market. So products, resources, and money are all being exchanged. Okay, next question. Do businesses demand or supply? The answer is both. They demand in the resource market, but they supply in the product market. Households, on the other hand, demand in the product market and they supply in the resource market. So both businesses and households are supplying and demanding. So far, this model is showing the private sector with just households and businesses. But there's a bunch of important things missing, like national defense, schools, and roads. Those things aren't produced by businesses. So let's add in the government and the public sector. The size and role of the government in an economy depends on a country's economic system, but in most market economies, the government still plays a role. First, the government buys goods and services from businesses in the product market, for example, fire trucks. And just like households, they pay for them. That's called government spending. The government also buys resources in the resource market, like teachers and firefighters. Again, it pays for those resources, which is again called government spending. The government then turns around and provides public goods and services like fire protection, schools, roads, and bridges to businesses and households. The government also pays money to businesses called subsidies or households called welfare. Economists call those transfer payments. There are situations when the government's giving out money, but not for goods and services. It's to meet some other objective, like to alleviate poverty or get companies to produce more fuel-efficient cars. But how does the government afford to provide public goods and welfare and subsidies? Well, they tax businesses and households. Income taxes and sales taxes fund government projects and programs. Now, there's several things still missing from this matrix, including a financial sector where money isn't spent, it's saved and then loaned out, and also the role of other countries with exports and imports. But for now, this diagram gives you a pretty good idea of how a modern economy works. One final thought. In the movie, the Matrix enslaves people.
You are a slave, Neo. Like everyone else, you were born into bondage.
Many people wonder if capitalism and this hamster wheel of constantly spending and earning and spending and earning enslaves people. Now, would your life be better off if you pulled a Thoreau and just lived out in the woods? I don't know, but what I do know is there's a lot of things you'd have to live without. First, there'd be no cell phones or computers, so say goodbye to YouTube. And also, there'd be no modern medicine or hospitals. It would be nice if none of us had to work, but there's a trade-off to that. So does the Matrix enslave us or liberate us? Let me know in the comments below, all right? Thanks for watching. Till next time. Next video, more video.
So now, economist Herman Daly develops a new understanding of economic development, okay? Now, with that standard model at hand, Daly argues that there must be a recognition that the economy is nothing but a subsystem within Earth's biosphere. He argues that resources ought to be used only at a rate that it can be maintained over a long period of time, and that recycles both byproducts of the production process as well as the products in themselves, or otherwise the finished product. Now, with that in mind, Daly tweaks the standard model by adding new details to it. Okay, so now these new details is that recognition that the economy exists within an infinite biosphere. Our economy runs on Earth's natural resourcing. Energy is lost at every stage of economic activity. Natural resources are no longer seen as minute to the production emerging from households, and wastes are produced at every stage of economic activity and put back into Earth's biosphere. Okay, so now many observers argue that a strong economic and financial plan can be created for the continued growth to a sustainable economic and environmental future. Some arguments that these observers made were that one, sustainability is a prudent long-term strategy. Businesses need to establish long-term plans of sustainability for economic survival. Businesses must know how to progress and when to progress along with society. Falling behind can cause economic turmoil. Now, significant cost savings can be achieved through sustainable practices. Savings on energy and materials can ultimately save significant costs and decrease the amount of cost and waste. Competitive advantages exist for sustainable businesses. Businesses that are ahead of the sustainability curve can attract environmental consumers and will also see a competitive advantage for workers who value progression. Now, sustainability is a good risk management strategy. As society progresses, new laws and regulations are put into place. If a business is already on the path of environmental sustainability, they can avoid legal liability. These